Kelvin Dorsey had been counting down the days. The last box was taped shut. The last piece of furniture was strapped to the back of the rental truck. All that was left was to close the door, lock the house, and never look back at Sycamore Drive again. The quiet Phoenix suburb had promised tranquility when he first bought the house 5 years ago. But quiet had quickly revealed itself as something else: constant surveillance, whispers that stopped when he walked by, and a neighbor whose life's mission seemed to be making his family miserable. That neighbor was Martha Kellerman. She was known on the block for policing trash cans, measuring lawns, and lecturing delivery drivers. She was the kind of woman who knew the color of every recycling bin lid on the street but didn't know her own grandson's birthday. And today, as Kelvin prepared to leave, she wasn't going to let the moment pass quietly. At first, it was the small things. She stood at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the moving truck. When the movers carried out Kelvin's sofa, she scribbled something on a notepad. When his daughter placed a potted plant in the back seat of her car, Martha muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Against regulations. Plants can't be transported like that." Kelvin tried to ignore her. He told himself he'd never see her again after today. He wiped the sweat off his forehead, lifted another box, and carried it to the truck. But Martha didn't stay on the curb. By midday, she was pacing the sidewalk, pointing her phone camera at his driveway, muttering into the microphone like she was documenting a crime scene. Neighbors began to notice. Curtains shifted. A couple across the street pulled out lawn chairs, pretending to drink lemonade while clearly watching the show. Kelvin's patience thinned. "Martha, it's moving day. I don't want trouble. Just let me finish." She smirked. "Moving day or not, rules are rules. I've already called the HOA about your truck blocking half the road. And if they don't act, I'll call the police." Kelvin set down the box harder than he meant to. The sound echoed, sharp as a gunshot. He took a step toward her, jaw tight. But before he could say another word, flashing blue lights turned onto Sycamore Drive. The neighbors straightened in their chairs. Phones came out. Suddenly, the quiet street was a stage. 2 officers stepped out of the squad car, hands on their belts, scanning the scene. Martha wasted no time. She waved her arms like she was hailing a taxi in New York. "There! That's him!" she shouted, pointing directly at Kelvin. "That's the man. He's threatening me, blocking the road, breaking HOA guidelines. He needs to be arrested before he hurts someone." Kelvin froze. Sweat dripped down his temples, but not from the heat. The officer's eyes locked on him. His moving cruise shifted nervously. His daughter stopped mid-step, clutching the plant like a shield. "Sir, can we talk to you for a moment?" one officer said. Kelvin raised his hands slowly. "Talk, sure. But I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just trying to move my family out of here." Martha's voice cut through the air like a knife. "He's dangerous. He's been hostile for years. He threatened me today." "That's a lie," Kelvin snapped, his voice sharper than he intended. His hands trembled as he pointed toward the bystanders. "Ask anyone here. I've done nothing but pack boxes." The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. Some avoided eye contact. Others kept their phones up, recording. And then, everything escalated. Martha stepped closer, her finger jabbing at Kelvin's chest though she never touched him. "This man is unstable. I don't feel safe. Arrest him now." The officer held up his hand. "Ma'am, step back." But she didn't. She pressed forward, her voice shrill. "You don't understand. He doesn't belong here. He never has." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Kelvin's stomach twisted. He knew what she meant. Everyone did. The officers exchanged glances. One of them sighed, already looking exhausted by the neighborhood drama. "Sir, let's step aside and talk." Kelvin wanted to argue. Wanted to shout. But something inside told him to breathe, to hold the line. He nodded, lowered his hands, and started walking with the officer toward the patrol car. That was when another car pulled onto the street. A black SUV, windows tinted, engine purring like a warning. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a sharp suit. Tall, broad-shouldered, calm as stone. His presence shifted the entire atmosphere. The neighbors leaned forward. Even the officers paused. It was Marcus Dorsey, Kelvin's son. Kelvin hadn't expected him this early. He thought Marcus would meet them at the new house later that night. But there he was, striding up the driveway, eyes fixed on the chaos. Martha frowned, her confidence faltering for the first time all day. "And who's this now? Another one of your movers? More trouble?" Marcus reached into his jacket. For a split second, the crowd tensed, then relaxed when he pulled out not a weapon, but a badge. "Special Agent Marcus Dorsey," he said, his voice low but firm. "And I think we need to have a very different conversation." The street fell silent. Even the cicadas seemed to stop. Martha blinked, her mouth opening but no words coming out. Kelvin stared at his son, his chest tightening with a mix of pride and fear. He knew this day had just taken a turn no one could predict. And it was only the beginning. The sight of Marcus's badge froze Martha in place. For years she had thrived on intimidation, her sharp tongue, her complaints, her endless calls to the HOA hotline. But suddenly, the balance of power shifted. She looked like a general who had just realized her army was outflanked. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm, steady tone cut deeper than a shout ever could. "Ma'am, you just falsely accused my father of a crime. You obstructed his lawful right to move out of his home. And you escalated this situation to the point where armed officers were brought in. That stops now." The officers exchanged a glance. Neither wanted to be in the middle of this. One muttered under his breath, "Oh boy." Kelvin stood rooted in place, watching his son take command. He felt both relief and a flicker of dread. Relief because Marcus had always known how to control a room. Dread because once Marcus started, there was no turning back. Martha tried to recover her composure. Her chin lifted, her voice sharpening. "I don't care who you are. This is my community. These are our rules. You people." "Stop," Marcus said, cutting her off like a blade. His badge glinted in the sun as he held it steady. "Choose your next words carefully." The crowd murmured. Phones kept recording. This was no longer just a neighborhood spat, it was evidence, potentially viral. Martha faltered. Her eyes darted to the officers for backup, but they stayed quiet. They weren't going to step between a federal agent and a furious neighbor. Her confidence cracked. But instead of retreating, she doubled down. "You think you can scare me? I've lived here 30 years. I know what kind of people cause trouble. Your father never fit in. And now you come here flashing a badge like you own the place? Not in my neighborhood." Marcus's face stayed calm, but his voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "You're right. My father never fit in. Because he doesn't believe in harassing people, filming their every move, or using the police like personal security. And as for owning this place? He doesn't want it. He's leaving. But you," he pointed at her, his finger steady, "you just crossed into criminal territory." Gasps spread across the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is he serious?" Marcus continued, pulling out a small notepad. "Obstruction. Harassment. False report to law enforcement. All of that is prosecutable. And lucky for you, ma'am, I happen to have authority to begin that process right now." Martha's face drained of color. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You can't, this is ridiculous." But her voice cracked on the last word, and everyone heard it. Kelvin stepped forward then, his hand on Marcus's arm. "Son, maybe we don't." Marcus didn't take his eyes off Martha. "Dad, how many times has she called the cops on you?" Kelvin hesitated. 3, maybe 4. 7. Marcus corrected without missing a beat. 7 calls in 5 years. Not one held up. Every time, it was this same routine: lies, exaggerations, humiliation. The neighbors began murmuring louder. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked down, guilty. Everyone on the street had known Martha was a problem, but no one had ever stood up to her like this. And now she was cornered. Her voice grew shrill. You don't know what it's like to protect a neighborhood. Without people like me, everything would fall apart. The HOA depends on. The HOA, Marcus interrupted, depends on people respecting the law, not abusing it. And today, you abused it for the last time. The officers shifted. One finally spoke. Agent Dorsey, do you want to file a formal complaint? Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked at his father, at the boxes stacked in the truck, at the tired eyes of his family. He could end this right here, make her face consequences she'd never forget. But he also knew how the system worked. Not yet, he said finally. But she doesn't get another chance. He tucked the badge back into his jacket. One more incident, one more false report, and she won't be dealing with HOA bylaws. She'll be dealing with federal court. The silence was suffocating. Martha trembled, her jaw tight, but for once she had no words. Kelvin exhaled, realizing only now how tense his shoulders had been. His son had just turned the street theater into a trial, one Martha had lost in front of the entire neighborhood. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because Martha Kellerman wasn't the type to lick her wounds quietly. She was the type to strike back. And the next move she made would take Sycamore Drive from simmering conflict to open war. That night, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Videos of the confrontation spread faster than wildfire. The clip of Marcus flashing his badge and silencing Martha hit 1 million views before sunrise. Comments poured in. Finally, someone shut her down. HOA Karen gets owned. This is why you don't mess with federal agents. But in her darkened living room, Martha Kellerman wasn't watching the comments. She was watching herself, over and over, muttering the same words like a curse, not in my neighborhood. Her hands shook. The woman who had ruled Sycamore Drive through fear was now the internet's villain of the week. And she wanted blood. 2 days later, Kelvin returned to the house to grab the last of his things. The moving truck was gone, the driveway empty. He thought the worst was behind him. But the neighborhood had changed. Some neighbors waved to him now, timidly, as if ashamed they hadn't defended him earlier. Others avoided eye contact altogether. And a small cluster, Martha's loyalists, stood in their yards, arms folded, their silence heavy with resentment. Inside, Kelvin packed in silence. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a reminder. This wasn't home anymore. He carried the last box onto the porch, and froze. Martha was waiting at the edge of his yard. She looked different. Gone was the smug, polished queen of the HOA. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes bloodshot, her voice hoarse from sleepless nights. But her rage was still there, simmering like a live wire. You think you won, she hissed. But this isn't over. Kelvin sighed. He wanted to ignore her, but something in her stare rooted him to the spot. Martha, it was over the moment you made it personal. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Personal? You humiliated me. You destroyed everything I built here. Do you think I'll just let that go? Before Kelvin could answer, Marcus's car pulled up. He stepped out, his presence immediate, controlled, authoritative. The moment Martha saw him, her composure cracked again. You, she spat. You think your badge makes you untouchable? I'll show this whole community who you really are. Marcus raised a hand, cutting her off. Careful. His voice was flat, colder than Kelvin had ever heard. One more threat, Martha, and I make good on my promise. The tension was suffocating. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, phones already raised. Everyone knew something was about to happen. Martha snapped. She lunged forward, snatching a rock from the edge of Kelvin's garden and hurling it at the moving truck. The crack of shattering glass echoed through the street. Gasps erupted. Someone screamed. And Marcus moved. He didn't draw his weapon, he didn't need to. He grabbed Martha's wrist, twisting it behind her back with professional precision. She shrieked, thrashing like a cornered animal, but he held her steady. "You're under arrest," he said, his voice carrying across the entire street. "Criminal mischief. Harassment. Violation of multiple restraining orders I warned you about." The officers from before pulled up seconds later, sirens flashing. This time, they didn't hesitate. They cuffed her, read her rights, and led her down the street as neighbors filmed every second. Kelvin stood frozen on the porch, watching as the woman who had tormented him for years was finally dragged away. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He just felt tired. Marcus placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "It's done." But Kelvin knew better. It wasn't just about Martha anymore. The neighborhood was fractured beyond repair. Some would celebrate her downfall. Others would resent him forever. He hadn't just moved out, he had left behind a battlefield. As the patrol car pulled away, Martha's voice echoed one last time down Sycamore Drive. "This isn't the end." Kelvin closed his eyes. For her, maybe not. But for him, for Marcus, and for the family, it was the beginning of something else. A hard-won freedom. And in the silence that followed, every neighbor knew Sycamore Drive would never be the same.